I want you to picture something for a second. Imagine you're flying high above the emerald waters of the South China Sea.
Okay.
The air is thick, the sun is beating down, and according to local legends, centuries ago, a magnificent dragon princess was doing exactly that.
Right. Making this massive epic journey.
Exactly, flying all the way from China down to Singapore to visit her prince. But as she flew over the waters off the east coast of peninsular Malaysia, something shifted.
The water was just too inviting.
Yeah, the water below her was just so incredibly warm, and the clouds surrounding her were so soft that she decided to just pause her journey.
Just take a break.
Right. She descended into that crystal clear water and she fell fast asleep. In fact, she fell into such a deep, peaceful slumber that she never woke up.
Which is where the myth gets really interesting.
Yeah, because the myth says she eventually turned entirely to stone, and that sleeping dragon is what we now know as Tioman Island.
It's a stunning visual, isn't it?
It really is.
And what I love about that specific myth is how perfectly it sets the tone for the environment we're going to explore today. Because when you look at the topography of Tioman from the water, it genuinely looks like a massive dormant creature.
With those jagged ridges jutting up.
Exactly, jutting right into the sky. That image of a powerful ancient being resting in the water, completely undisturbed, it tells you almost everything you need to know about the atmosphere there.
It feels ancient.
It feels entirely detached from the frantic, hyper-connected pace of the modern world.
Which brings us directly to the core mission of today's deep dive.
Let's get into it.
We are looking at a really fascinating stack of travelogues and environmental notes and firsthand accounts to examine a pretty controversial travel dilemma.
The great dilemma.
We're essentially putting two very different philosophies of travel head to head. To ask you a rather provocative question, is Malaysia's most famous, heavily marketed island destination actually a worse choice than its forgotten, rugged underdog?
It really is the ultimate showdown of modern tourism.
Yeah.
Because in one corner, we have the undisputed heavyweight champion,
Langkawi.
the Jewel of Kedah.
Exactly known globally as the Jewel of Kedah, this is the golden child of the National Tourism Board.
The polished gem.
Right. If you look at the infrastructure, Langkawi is essentially designed for frictionless consumption. It's curated. You have the massive international luxury brands.
Like the St. Regis and the Ritz-Carlton.
Exactly. You have immaculate cable cars taking you up the mountains, jet skis zipping across manicured bays, and an absolute abundance of air-conditioned, duty-free chocolate and liquor shops.
It sounds so easy.
It is. It's a highly sanitized, incredibly easy-to-consume experience.
Okay, so that's Langkawi. But what about our sleeping dragon? Because back in the 1970s, Time magazine actually hailed Tioman as the most beautiful island in the world.
They did.
But looking through these accounts today, it seems like the island hasn't been touched by a paintbrush, let alone a major municipal development plan since that article was published.
That's a very accurate assessment. One traveler's note described it in a way that genuinely made me laugh out loud. They called it Jurassic Park, but without the electric fences.
That is the perfect description.
What does that actually look like on the ground?
It looks wild. And I mean that in the most literal sense of the word. And what we're really doing here isn't just a simple exercise in picking a vacation spot.
Right.
It's a much deeper exploration of what we actually want when we leave home.
Mm-hmm.
When you pit Langkawi against Tioman, you're asking yourself to evaluate a massive trade-off.
Okay.
Do you want seamless, predictable luxury where everything bends to your comfort? Or do you want raw, completely unmanaged authenticity?
The unmanaged part is key.
Exactly. It's the choice between an environment that has been carefully engineered to serve you and an environment that absolutely demands you adapt to it.
So I want to dig into that adaptation. Because let's start with the very first hurdle of any journey, which is just getting there.
Right.
I call this the geography of friction. Now, just to set the baseline, talk to me about arriving in Langkawi. What is that process like for someone traveling today?
It is the definition of logistical ease. The friction is virtually zero.
Zero friction.
None. You can fly right into a modern international airport from almost anywhere in the region.
Yeah.
You step off the plane into an air-conditioned terminal. You grab a quick artisan flat white at a modern cafe. You pull out your phone and summon a grab car.
Which is essentially the Uber of Southeast Asia.
Right. And within 30 minutes, you are rolling up to a 5-star resort. A concierge opens your door, hands you a cold towel and a welcome drink, and you're completely settled.
You don't even have to think.
You can go from a stressful corporate office in a major city to a state of total unbothered relaxation in a matter of hours. with practically no physical or mental effort required on your part.
You're basically flowing on a conveyor belt of hospitality.
Precisely.
But then there's the Tioman pilgrimage.
Oh, yeah?
And reading through these sources, pilgrimage really seems like the only appropriate word because getting there sounds like running a grueling gauntlet.
It really is.
First of all, the island itself literally dictates when you're even allowed to attempt the journey, right?
Nature is the absolute first gatekeeper here.
How so?
Well, you can't just decide on a whim that you need a quick weekend getaway in December. The island shuts its doors.
Literally shuts them.
From November to February, the monsoon season hits the east coast of the peninsula, and it essentially puts the entire area underwater.
Wow.
The ocean swells become massive and incredibly dangerous, making the crossing impossible. The ferries are completely canceled. You are physically and legally barred from entering.
So the island literally rejects visitors for a third of the year.
It just says no.
But let's say you go during the prime window, say June or July. The journey is still intense.
Oh, absolutely.
One account I read broke down the transit, and it sounds exhausting.
Huh.
You start with this grueling 5-hour bus ride from Kuala Lumpur,
5 hours minimum.
winding your way across the peninsula until you finally arrive at a coastal transit town called Mersing.
Right, Mersing.
And the sensory details of Mersing in these notes are wild. It doesn't smell like a tropical vacation.
No, it definitely doesn't.
It smells vividly of what one writer called dried fish and desperation.
It's a very specific smell.
What is going on in Mersing?
Mersing is a fascinating place because it's not a destination. It's a waiting room.
A waiting room?
Yeah, it's a very gritty, highly functional coastal hub. The primary industry there isn't luxury tourism. It's commercial fishing.
Ah, so that explains the smell.
Exactly. So when you step off that bus, you are instantly hit with the heavy, salty, pungent smell of the daily catch being processed, dried, and shipped.
Right.
The reality of the local maritime economy collides aggressively with these weary backpack-toting travelers who have just spent half a day on a cramped bus.
And from what I gather, once you are in Mersing, you enter this completely chaotic phase.
The analog hell.
Yes. Because in Langkawi, everything is digital. You flash a QR code on your phone and you're through. But in Mersing, travelers describe being thrust into an analog hell. Why is the ticketing process so complicated?
Because you're dealing with layers of overlapping local bureaucracy that haven't been streamlined for the user's convenience.
So no QR codes?
No. You can't just buy one catch-all ticket. You have to physically queue up to pay a separate marine park fee in cash.
Okay.
Then you move to another counter to pay a state park fee. And even if you were proactive and bought your ferry tickets online weeks in advance, you still have to find a specific kiosk to print out physical boarding passes.
So you're just running from line to line.
While standing in a sweltering, unair-conditioned terminal surrounded by people shouting in Malay, with incredibly loud, distorted boarding announcements echoing off the concrete walls.
It's a shock to the system.
A total shock for anyone used to digital convenience.
Okay, so you survive the bus. You survive the smell of dried fish. You navigate the analog hell of the terminal, and you finally board the ferry.
The Blue Water Express.
The Blue Water Express.
I have to be honest, the descriptions of this boat ride cross the line from chaotic into purely cinematic comedy and horror.
It's legendary. Can you break down what it is actually like inside this ferry for that 2-hour ride across the South China Sea?
It's less of a transport service and more of a sensory endurance test.
Tell me about it.
When you step into the cabin of the Blue Water Express, the first thing you notice is that you cannot see outside.
Because of the salt, right?
Exactly. The windows of the ferry are completely opaque because they are coated in thick layers of dried salt spray from years of crossing the ocean.
So you're essentially in a sealed metal tube.
A sealed metal tube. Then there's the temperature.
Oh, the AC.
The air conditioning is universally set to what travelers describe as morgue levels of freezing.
Ugh, levels.
You have people who packed for a tropical island desperately pulling on hoodies and wrapping themselves in beach towels just to stop shivering.
And while you are freezing in this opaque tube, you have the smell and the sound.
Right.
The notes mention this creeping scent of heavy diesel fuel that slowly fills the cabin as the engines labor against the swells.
It gets really intense.
But the absolute best detail, the one that really got me, is the entertainment.
Oh, the TV.
Yes. There is an old, heavy CRT television bolted to the ceiling of this ferry. And multiple sources noted that it was loudly blasting the 1997 Jennifer Lopez movie Anaconda.
On a continuous loop, apparently, at maximum volume.
That is insane.
It's a completely surreal, almost hallucinatory experience.
Yeah.
You're freezing, smelling diesel, bouncing over massive ocean swells, and listening to giant snakes screaming on a 20-year-old television.
Okay, I have to push back here, because earlier you framed this as a philosophical choice.
I did.
But isn't this just an excuse for terrible local infrastructure? Shouldn't a beautiful place be accessible to more than just backpackers who are willing to suffer through frostbite and bad 90s movies? Why is this a good thing?
It's a totally valid question, and it is the crux of why Tioman is the way it is.
Okay.
If we connect this grueling journey to the bigger picture, all of these logistical nightmares actually serve a vital protective function.
A protective function.
Yes, this intense friction acts as a massive filter.
A filter.
Think about Langkawi again. Its ease of access means anyone can go. That inevitably draws a massive demographic of casual tourists who are just looking for a quick photo op, a weekend party, or a change of scenery without any real investment in the place itself.
Right, they just want a background for their drinks.
Exactly. By making it physically, logistically, and psychologically difficult to arrive, Tioman naturally weeds out that demographic.
So if you just want to sit by a pool and drink a margarita, you're going to take one look at the 5-hour bus ride and the Blue Water Express and say absolutely not.
Precisely. It preserves the island exclusively for travelers who possess genuine intent, immense patience, and resilience.
You have to earn it.
You have to really, truly want to be there to endure that journey. The friction is a feature, not a bug. It ensures that the people who step off that boat respect the effort it took to arrive.
That makes a lot of sense. You are earning your entry.
Exactly.
So let's talk about what happens when you finally do step off that boat, the island's violent geography.
This is where the shock really sets in.
You survive the freezing, diesel-scented Anaconda screening. The boat engine cuts out, and you dock at the main village of Tikek.
Tikek, right.
This is the administrative hub.
Right.
What is the immediate visual impact when you look up from that jetty?
The contrast with a place like Langkawi is incredibly stark.
How so?
Well, Langkawi is famous for its gentle, rolling hills that have been carefully managed, terraced, and developed over decades. It feels soft and approachable.
And Tioman?
Tioman, on the other hand, presents you with what one writer brilliantly termed violent geography.
Wait, what makes a geography violent? That's such an aggressive word for a tropical island.
It's the sheer abrupt verticality of it.
Verticality.
When you look up from Tikek, you immediately see the Twin Peaks, known locally as Nenek Simika.
The dragon horns.
Exactly. They don't just gently rise from the beach. They just straight out of the ocean like jagged dragon horns, completely draped in dense, prehistoric primary rainforest. It looks aggressive. It looks like a landscape that actively resists human habitation. A place where humanity is barely holding on at the very edges of the sand.
And from what I understand, that verticality isn't just visually intimidating, it has massive implications for how the island operates.
Huge implications. Because the slopes are at a 45-degree angle of solid rock and thick jungle development is severely restricted.
You can't just build a mega resort.
No, you cannot easily bring in heavy machinery to bulldoze a mountain like that to build a massive resort complex or a 4-lane highway. The geography itself acts as an impenetrable defensive wall against the kind of overdevelopment that has consumed other parts of Southeast Asia.
Which brings us to the next, arguably most terrifying leg of the journey.
The ridge crossing.
Yes. Because if you want the real untouched Tioman experience, you don't stay in the administrative hub of Tikek where the concrete and the duty-free shop are.
No, you keep going.
You want to get to the secluded Jawara Bay, which is on the completely opposite side of the island facing the open expanse of the South China Sea. And getting there requires crossing that violent geography.
This is the moment where the transition from the relatively civilized port to the wild interior truly happens. And it is not for the faint of heart.
Oh, harrowing doesn't even begin to cover it. The notes describe piling into a 4x4 taxi, specifically a rugged Mitsubishi Triton, to begin this ascent up a literal 45-degree incline.
On a single, narrow concrete path.
That goes straight over the jagged mountain ridge. I was reading one specific account that detailed the driver, a local guy named Mr. Din. What is it like riding with someone like Mr. Din?
It's the ultimate exercise in surrender and control.
I can imagine.
The engine of this 4x4 is just screaming. The gears are grinding, and the tires are constantly scrabbling for grip on this incredibly steep, often wet concrete path.
And what is Mr. Din doing?
Well, while you're sitting in the back gripping the door handle with white knuckles, Mr. Din is the picture of nonchalance.
Just totally relaxed.
He's casually smoking a cigarette, with one hand texting on his phone, with the other completely unbothered as he actively drifts the truck around blind corners that drop off into bottomless, dense jungle ravines.
I would be genuinely wondering if I was going to make it. You're entirely at the mercy of this man and his truck.
You really are.
But then you crest the peak of that terrifying ridge, and this is where the payoff happens. The jungle suddenly opens up, and you are looking down at Dwara Bay.
The great reveal.
After the bus, the freezing ferry, and the near-death 4x4 drift session, what does Dwara Bay actually offer?
It offers profound total isolation.
Okay.
You're looking down at brilliant emerald green water and a massive sweeping crescent of untouched golden sand. But more importantly than what you see is what you hear.
Or what you don't care.
Exactly. There are no jet skis buzzing around like angry mosquitoes. There are no parasailing boats with their engines whining. There is no thumping beach club music drifting over the water.
So silence.
Pure, unadulterated nature. Just the sound of the wind in the palms and the crash of the surf.
Does the difficulty of the journey fundamentally change how you experience that silence? I feel like if I just took a helicopter there, I wouldn't appreciate it as much.
It changes everything. The geography enforces a psychological shift.
A psychological shift.
You cannot simply conquer a place like Tioman the way you can breeze through Langkawi with your wallet and a smartphone. You are forced, step by step, to submit to its landscape.
Wow.
By the time you finally step onto the sand at Dwara Bay, your mindset has been forcibly altered. You are no longer a consumer demanding a service. The island has reminded you that you are a guest in the jungle's house.
You feel deeply that you've earned that view.
Absolutely.
That is a powerful distinction, and it brings us right into the core experience of staying on the island. We're calling this Section 3, Unmanicured Authenticity.
That's a great title for it.
Let's talk about where you actually sleep, because the rustic living on Tioman is a universe away from Langkawi.
Very true.
If I book a trip to Langkawi, I'm looking at high thread count sheets, a smart TV, and a minibar that costs a fortune. Where am I staying in Tioman?
You are checking into places that proudly bear names, like Bushman Chalets or Bharat Tioman.
Bushman's Chalet.
Yeah, these are not sprawling climate-controlled complexes. We're talking about basic, often handmade wooden structures built on stilts directly over the sand or nestled right at the edge of the jungle.
On stilts.
There are generally no televisions. The air conditioning might just be a ceiling fan. It is a complete rejection of standardized global luxury.
I have to admit, I like my thread counts. I like a plush mattress. What is the appeal of sleeping in a wooden box on stilts?
The appeal is the total removal of the barrier between you and the environment.
Ah, the barrier.
When you stay in one of these chalets, you hear the ocean moving beneath the floorboards. You feel the heavy humidity of the jungle air. You wake up to the sound of macaques in the trees.
You're right, in it.
You are physically closer to the elements. The luxury isn't in the amenities. The luxury is the absolute proximity to raw nature.
And nowhere is that lack of a barrier more apparent than in the culinary divide between the two islands. Let's talk about the food.
Yes, the food.
Because reading these accounts, this is where Tioman really undeniably shines. In Langkawi, you might go down to the main tourist strip, Pantai Shaneng, sit at a heavily branded air-conditioned restaurant and pay $15 for a piece of fish.
Right.
But what is the reality of that fish?
The reality of scaling up to feed thousands of resort guests every single day is that local waters simply cannot sustainably provide that volume of food anymore.
They're tapped out.
The local ecosystems have been tapped out or designated as protected zones. So that $15 fish in Langkawi has almost certainly been frozen, shipped in from a commercial distributor, and defrosted for your plate.
Defrosted fish for $15.
You are paying for the brand, the ambiance, and the massive supply chain overhead, not the freshness of the catch.
That makes sense, but it is a little depressing.
Oh.
Contrast that with the dining experience on Tioman. The notes vividly describe a place right on the beach called Cock Longs.
Cock Longs.
Paint a picture of what it's like to eat there.
It's incredibly raw and immediate. You're walking up to a little unassuming wooden shack right on the sand. You pull up a cheap red plastic chair at a wobbly table.
A wobbly table.
There are local island cats casually weaving between your legs, hoping you'll drop a scrap. You hear the waves crashing just a few feet away. And you order the akan by car.
The grilled stingray.
Yes.
The descriptions of this dish made my mouth water. It is grilled right there over an open flame, and it is completely slathered in this intensely rich sambal.
It's an incredible dish.
Now, the notes mention that this sambal is heavily reliant on something called shrimp belacan. For anyone who hasn't explored deep Southeast Asian cuisine, what exactly is belacan and why is it so crucial to this dish?
Belacan is the secret weapon of Malaysian cooking, and it is not for the faint of heart.
Why not?
It is a fermented shrimp paste. Local fishermen catch massive amounts of tiny krill or shrimp, salt them heavily, and leave them to ferment under the intense tropical sun for weeks until they break down into this incredibly pungent, dark paste.
Fermented under the sun.
On its own, the smell is overwhelmingly strong, almost offensive to a Western palate. But when you cook it, when you mix it with fresh chilies, garlic, lime, and sugar, and slap it onto a piece of fresh stingray over a charcoal fire, it transforms.
It transforms.
It provides this deeply complex, smoky umami flavor that is both spicy and sweet. It is the absolute soul of the dish.
And the sensory experience of sitting there, the smoke blowing off the grill, the intense heat of the spice hitting your tongue, the humidity of the evening air.
It's perfect.
And the best part, that freshly caught, incredibly complex meal costs maybe $4 or $5.
This is where we see the stark divide between hyperlocal and globalized economies.
Explain that.
Tioman operates on an immediate hyperlocal loop. The person taking your order at Kak Long's is very likely related to the person who grilled the fish, who is likely the same person who pulled that stingray out of the South China Sea that very morning on a small wooden boat.
No supply chain.
There is no massive corporate supply chain. There is just the ocean, the fire, and your plate. That level of immediacy and freshness is something that all the money in the world cannot buy in a sanitized five-star resort.
It's as authentic as it gets, and that hyperlocal immediate feel extends to the social rules of the island as well.
All right, the vibe.
Tioman has a very specific vibe that I found fascinating. It's part of Malaysia, so it is a conservative Muslim island, but technically it holds duty-free status, just like Langkawi.
Exactly.
So you can actually buy a bottle of gin for about $10 at the port in Phuket, but it doesn't have the chaotic full moon party vibe of islands in Thailand. Why is that?
Because the cultural framework of the island dictates the terms of consumption.
How so?
The availability of cheap alcohol is there, but the local customs demand respect. You can't just walk down the main path shirtless, swigging loudly from a bottle of cheap liquor. The community won't tolerate it.
So where do you drink?
Drinking is restricted to the privacy of the balcony of your own chalet. Or you go to very specific, designated, sandy-floored, low-key bars, like a place frequently mentioned in the notes called This Station.
So it naturally curbs the rowdy behavior. It totally changes your heart rate.
It really does.
You aren't rushing from a loud happy hour to a thumping nightclub. You're sitting quietly with your feet in the sand, listening to the tide come in, sipping a cheap drink, and having a real conversation.
It forces a slower, much more mindful approach to winding down, which aligns perfectly with the quiet, reflective nature of the island itself.
Exactly. It's a place for travelers who are comfortable with their own thoughts rather than those looking for external distractions.
Well said.
But as much as we love the land, the food, and the vibe, we have to talk about what is beneath the surface.
Yeah.
Because a massive part of island travel is the ocean.
This is a crucial point of comparison.
I want to look closely at the facts regarding the water quality. If I go to Langkawi, the brochures show pristine, crystal clear water. Is that the reality if I wade in outside my luxury hotel?
It is absolutely not the reality. And this is where the marketing really diverges from the biology.
Oh, boy.
Despite Langkawi's reputation, the water visibility around the main island is actually surprisingly murky. On an average day, if you put on a snorkel mask, you're only looking at about 2 to 5 meters of visibility.
Why is it so murky? Is it pollution?
It's a combination of heavy continuous boat traffic churning up the water and the natural geography of the surrounding straits, which hold a lot of fine sediment.
So the water is safe, but it's cloudy.
Exactly. If you're staying in Langkawi and you actually want to see a vibrant, colorful marine ecosystem, you can't just walk off the beach. You are forced to book a commercial tour, get on a crowded boat, and take an hour-long ride all the way out to a designated protected zone called the Payar Marine Park.
The Payar Marine Park.
The nature has essentially been outsourced away from the tourist hubs.
That feels like such a disconnect. You're on a tropical island, but you have to commute to see a fish?
It is a commute.
But Tioman is fundamentally different. The sources describe taking a tiny 5-minute boat ride or even just swimming out to a spot called Rengas Island just off the coast of Tioman.
Rengas Island is incredible.
And the water there is literally described by multiple travelers as an aquarium. What are you actually seeing when you put your face in the water there?
You're instantly surrounded by a thriving, vibrant ecosystem. The water clarity is astonishing.
What kind of life is down there?
You're swimming alongside blacktip reef sharks that are just casually cruising through the shallows. You see ancient massive sea turtles. The notes describe them as the size of coffee tables, just gliding past you completely unbothered by your presence.
The size of coffee tables, that is massive.
They're huge.
And the detail that genuinely stopped me in my tracks reading these accounts was the cuttlefish. Have you ever seen a cuttlefish in the wild?
They are completely alien.
Alien is the perfect word. The accounts describe coming face to face with these incredible, intelligent creatures hovering in the water.
And the colors.
Yes. They actively communicate by flashing neon, purple, green, and white colors across their skin right in front of your mask. It is literally National Geographic happening 3 feet away from you.
And the most important detail here is that the coral in Tioman is alive.
Alive.
It hasn't been bleached or trampled to death by thousands of daily tourists. You don't need a massive commercial tour boat to find nature. You're swimming in it.
And that profound proximity to raw nature doesn't stop at the water's edge. The terrestrial encounters on Tioman are just as unmanaged and visceral.
Unmanaged is putting it mildly.
The way you explore the island is so delightfully sketchy. There are no smooth paved highways for rental cars. You can't rent a moped.
No mopeds.
Instead, you rent these rickety, rusted, often brakeless bicycles, and you navigate this single, narrow, cracked concrete path that winds its way through the dense jungle connecting the different bays.
Which again forces you to move at a human pace.
Yeah.
You cannot isolate yourself in a climate-controlled box. You are exposed to the heat, the sounds, and the people.
Yes. As you are pedaling this brakeless bike, trying not to crash, you are passing right through local kampungs, which are the traditional villages.
The kampungs.
You see kids playing in the afternoon heat. One writer mentioned watching them play sepak takraw.
Sepak takraw.
For those who don't know, can you explain what sepak takraw is? Because watching it is mind-bending.
It is an incredible Southeast Asian sport. Imagine a volleyball net, but instead of using a softball in your hands, you're using a hard woven rattan ball.
A hard ball.
And you can only use your feet, knees, chest, and head. The athleticism is staggering. You see local teenagers doing literal backflips in midair to spike this hard ball over the net with their feet. It is deeply ingrained in the local culture.
And you are just riding past this, witnessing the actual daily rhythm of local life. It isn't a cultural show put on in a hotel lobby for tourists. It's just a Tuesday afternoon in the village.
Just daily life.
But you are also sharing that narrow concrete path with the local wildlife, and this is where it gets a little scary.
The wildlife doesn't yield.
No, it doesn't. The sources specifically highlight encountering monitor lizards crossing the path. Now, when I hear lizard, I think of a little green gecko on a wall, but that is not what we are talking about here, is it?
Not at all. We're talking about prehistoric reptiles. The notes describe them as Godzilla-sized, and that is barely an exaggeration.
Godzilla-sized.
These are massive, heavy, powerful creatures. They can grow to several feet long, and they do not care that you are on a bicycle.
They just claim the road.
If a massive monitor lizard is lumbering across the concrete path, you do not try to shoo it away. The accounts mention them literally stopping, turning their heads, and aggressively hissing at tourists who try to get too close.
I would turn the bike around immediately. I'm not messing with a hissing dinosaur.
Smart move.
But what does this stark contrast in handling the natural world tell us about the two islands?
It showcases two entirely different philosophies of existence. Langkawi represents a philosophy of absolute control. The environment is heavily managed, manicured, and subdued, specifically for the comfort, aesthetics, and safety of the tourist. Nature is reduced to a pretty backdrop for your photos.
Like a stage set.
Exactly. But Tioman represents a philosophy of coexistence. The wildlife is not managed. The environment is not tamed. If a monitor lizard wants the path, it takes the path.
It takes the path.
Tioman requires the tourist to recognize that they are not the apex priority, and they must coexist with nature on nature's terms.
Which is a beautiful sentiment until things go wrong.
Yes.
Because if nature is in charge, it means the tourist isn't. And I want to play devil's advocate here because we have painted this deeply romantic picture of the wild.
It's true.
But that brings us to the dark side of paradise. We have to be completely honest about the flaws. This unmanaged authenticity comes with some serious friction and deeply frustrating
Like
realities.
shadow side.
Let's start with the pests, because reading about this genuinely made my skin crawl.
This is exactly where the romance of the wild collides violently with harsh biological reality.
Absolutely. In Langkawi, the luxury resorts have entire dedicated teams focused on pest control. They actively fog the manicured grounds with chemical deterrents every single evening to ensure that a mosquito doesn't ruin your sunset cocktail hour.
They chemically bend the environment to your comfort.
Tioman does absolutely no such thing. Tioman leaves you squarely in the middle of the food chain, and the biggest villain here isn't the sharks and it isn't the Godzilla lizards. What is the real terror of the Tioman beaches?
The sandflies. They're the invisible tax you pay for untouched beaches.
The accounts of the sandflies are horrifying. Travelers describe walking on these beautiful, empty, untouched stretches of golden sand, feeling completely at peace, entirely unaware that they are actively being bitten by these nearly microscopic insects.
You don't feel a thing in the moment.
But what happens hours later?
Hours later, the biological reaction sets in. The agony is delayed but severe. You break out in massive, intensely itchy red welts that can last for weeks.
Weeks of itching.
It's a physical toll exacted by the environment. If you demand a beach that hasn't been chemically treated and manicured for human comfort, you have to accept the reality of the ecosystem that lives in that sand.
You are intruding on their habitat.
And they will feed on you.
Just reading about the itch made me want to scratch my ankles. It is a harsh reality check. But the sandflies are just the start of the melancholic, darker side of the island. There is also the reality of the infrastructure, specifically the ghost resorts.
Ah, the ghost resort.
Sources paint this incredibly haunting, almost post-apocalyptic picture of the southern end of the island. What happened down there?
It's a fascinating and sobering history. Back in the 1990s, Tioman experienced a massive speculative surge of development, a real tourism boom fueled by global attention like that Time magazine article.
The 90s boom.
Developers poured massive amounts of capital into the island and built these sprawling mega resorts, expecting it to become the next Phuket or Bali. But the boom didn't hold.
What went wrong?
The Asian financial crisis hit, the money dried up, and mass tourists eventually gravitated toward easier, frictionless places like Langkawi, so these massive structures were simply abandoned.
And because you can't easily demolish buildings on an isolated island with no heavy infrastructure, they just left them there to rot.
Just left them.
You can literally walk past these colossal decaying hotel complexes. The roofs are caved in. The massive swimming pools that used to host pool parties are now just cracked concrete bowls filled with stagnant green sludge,
Breeding mosquitoes.
slowly being swallowed whole by the encroaching jungle vines. It sounds like a scene from The Last of Us. What is the broader takeaway from seeing these ruins?
These ghost resorts are literal skeletons of tourism past. They serve as a stark, physical representation of how incredibly fragile island economies truly are.
Fragile.
They're entirely dependent on the fickle whims of the global travel market and macroeconomics. When a trend shifts or a crisis hits, the capital vanishes overnight, leaving the local environment permanently scarred.
It's a massive cautionary tale.
About the dangers of unchecked speculative development in remote, delicate ecosystems.
And speaking of scars on the ecosystem, we cannot ignore the waste management realities. Because Tioman is so rugged, so vertical, and so isolated, dealing with basic human trash is a monumental challenge.
It is.
The sources note the heartbreaking reality of the global plastic problem actively washing up on Tioman's pristine shores. When the tide comes in at Suar Bay, it doesn't just bring beautiful, untouched seashells. What else is riding in on the waves?
The tide brings in the physical evidence of the modern world. You see literal lines of plastic water bottles, degraded food wrappers, microplastics, and discarded flip-flops washing up from the open ocean currents.
So sad.
It is a stark, depressing reminder that no place on Earth, no matter how remote or difficult to reach, is truly isolated anymore. The modern world intrudes, even if only through its refuse.
And the really jarring part is how the island is forced to handle it. In Langkawi, your waste magically disappears. A housekeeper takes it, it goes down a chute onto a truck, and it is gone from your reality.
Out of sight, out of mind.
But on Tioman, there is no massive municipal waste infrastructure. There are no daily garbage barges to truck all this ocean plastic away, so what do the local villagers have to do?
They are forced to manage it themselves in the only way they practically can on a remote island. They burn it.
Which results in this incredibly visceral, jarring reality. You are sitting on the porch of your wooden chalet, watching a beautiful sunset, trying to enjoy the pristine ocean breeze, and suddenly the air is thick and heavy with the toxic, acrid scent of burning plastic from a village disposal fire.
It violently shatters the illusion of an untouched Eden.
It absolutely does.
But it also forces the traveler to confront the reality of their own consumption. In a luxury resort, the environmental impact of your stay is hidden from you. In Tioman, you are breathing in the consequences of a world built on single-use plastics. You see exactly where the water bottle you just emptied is ultimately going to end up.
That is a tough pill to swallow. And this lack of infrastructure doesn't just apply to trash disposal. It applies to the physical exploration of the island itself. I want to talk about the danger of what the sources refer to as bushwhacking.
Bushwhacking.
Because if you want to see a beautiful waterfall in Langkawi, it is a curated experience. You park your rental car in a paved lot. You walk up a gently sloping path with sturdy wooden handrails. You read a helpful informational plaque about the flora. You take your selfie and you leave.
Very civilized.
How do you get to the famous Asa waterfall in Tioman?
You don't just take a walk. You mount an expedition.
That is the perfect distinction. The trek to Asa waterfall is a grueling, exhausting physical ordeal. The path is largely unmarked. You are entirely enveloped by the jungle canopy, which traps the intense humidity, turning the air into a suffocating, heavy sauna.
A literal sauna.
There are no helpful signs telling you which way to go when the path splits. There are certainly no handrails to keep you from slipping on the mossy, wet rocks. You are almost guaranteed to get lost at least once wandering off the trail.
And while you are sweating, exhausted, and potentially lost, you're also dealing with the local fauna.
The leeches! I cannot handle the leeches.
They are persistent.
The notes specifically mention that as you push through the damp brush, these leeches attach themselves to your ankles and legs, so you are lost, sweating profusely, slipping on rocks, and actively having to stop and pull blood-sucking parasites off your skin. It sounds genuinely miserable and potentially dangerous if you aren't physically prepared or properly hydrated.
It is entirely unforgiving. And this brings us to what I believe is the most critical question of our entire deep dive. It is the core paradox of the modern traveler.
What's the paradox?
We constantly hear people complain about the lack of convenience when they visit these wild places. We wish for faster, more reliable ferries with better air conditioning. We wish the local government would heavily spray the beaches so our legs aren't covered in sandfly welts. We wish for paved, clearly marked trails so we don't get lost and covered in leeches. And we definitely wish for a massive, invisible municipal waste system to handle the trash so we don't have to smell burning plastic while we watch the sunset.
We want the aesthetic of the wild, but we want the comfort of a resort.
Exactly. We want wildness on our terms. But the reality is, you cannot demand a rugged, completely untouched wilderness and simultaneously expect municipal waste management, clearly marked safety trails, and chemical pest control.
They are mutually exclusive.
The flaws, the friction, the bugs, the leeches, and the difficult logistics are not administrative mistakes. They are the inextricable shadow of the island's raw beauty. The fundamental price of experiencing an unmanicured world is that it is by definition unmanicured. It will not coddle you.
That is such a profound way to look at it. Okay, let's pull all of this together for our final verdict, because we have laid out all the evidence from this massive stack of source material.
We covered a lot of ground.
We have pitted the frictionless, sanitized luxury of Langkawi against the abrasive, authentic, incredibly beautiful reality of Tioman. So when it comes down to it, which island is actually better?
If we evaluate this purely on paper, as a rational list of pros and cons, Langkawi wins in a landslide.
On paper, sure.
It is objectively the superior product. The logistics of getting there are effortless. The comfort level is sky high. You have access to high-speed Wi-Fi. There's an incredible variety of safe international food, and you have a 0% chance of getting a leech on your ankle or shivering through a screening of Anaconda.
Rationally, Langkawi is the smart choice. But what about in the soul? In that part of you that actually travels to feel something different, to be moved or to be challenged?
In that arena, Tioman wins, hands down.
No question.
As the notes perfectly synthesize, Langkawi is a commodity designed for easy consumption. You consume the beach, you enjoy the cocktail you leave, and you probably don't think much about it a year later.
It's disposable luxury.
But Tioman is an experience.
Yeah.
It challenges your patience, it frustrates you with its logistics, it physically bites you, but it leaves an absolute undeniable mark on your memory that a sanitized, predictable resort simply cannot match.
It really comes down to self-awareness, knowing yourself and being completely honest about what you are actually seeking when you pack your bag.
Exactly.
I couldn't agree more. So who is this actually for? I am talking directly to you right now listening to this deep dive. If you are traveling with young kids and you need predictable safety and quick access to a hospital, or if your idea of a great vacation involved wearing high heels to a nice dinner without sinking into the mud, or if you absolutely positively need a strong, reliable Wi-Fi connection to hop on a corporate Zoom call, do not go to Tioman.
You will be miserable.
You will go to Langkawi. You'll have a lovely, relaxing time. But if you have this deep, burning desire to see what Southeast Asia looked like 30 years ago, before the massive influx of global capital, before the paved highways, and before the Instagram influencers curated every corner,
The real deal.
if you want to eat incredible, mind-blowing homemade curries in a wooden shack with local fishermen, and if you want to casually spot reef sharks and alien cuttlefish on a random Tuesday morning, then you have to endure the friction. You have to choose Tioman.
And for those who do decide to choose the harder, wilder path, our sources actually bury a fantastic, practically secret hack to mitigate just a little bit of that initial friction.
So this is easily the best logistical tip in the entire stack of notes. If you are brave enough to choose Tioman, but the idea of that freezing, diesel-fumed, anaconda-screening Blue Water Express ferry is just a bridge too far for your sanity, there's a workaround.
The secret hack.
You don't actually have to take the boat. You can fly a tiny regional airline called Berjaya Air.
Berjaya.
It is a small twin-propeller plane that completely bypasses the dried fish smell of the Mersing terminal and lands directly on that tiny, terrifying airstrip in Tikek that we mentioned earlier. It saves you hours of trauma, though it does mean you miss out on earning your arrival the hard way.
It is a slight compromise, a tiny concession to modern convenience that still gets you to the wild heart of the island with your sanity intact.
Sure.
But as we wrap up our analysis of this incredible travel dilemma, I want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to mull over.
Leave us with it.
We've firmly established today that Tioman's unique beauty is inextricably bound up in its hostility and its friction. But imagine if the global economic winds shifted tomorrow and limitless municipal funding suddenly poured into the island.
Oh.
If we were to wave a magic wand and fix every single one of Tioman's frustrating flaws, if we brought in massive luxury high-speed ferries, if we paved the jungle trails with concrete and handrails, if we chemically eradicated the sandflies and built massive efficient recycling plants, would we inevitably destroy the exact magic that makes the island so profoundly special in the first place? Does a destination at its very core have to remain just a little bit hostile to remain truly beautiful?